September 1944. Supreme Allied Commander Dwight Eisenhower had the data to end the war before winter. 2 reports sat on his desk, showing him exactly how to do it. Report 1. General George Patton's Third Army had advanced 400 miles in 1 month. They had liberated huge sections of France. They had destroyed multiple German divisions. They were running out of fuel because they had outrun their supply lines. The Allies were hauling fuel from Normandy beaches because they lacked adequate port capacity. Give Patton fuel and priority, and he could reach the German border and the West Wall within days. Report 2. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery's 21st Army Group was requesting additional supplies before continuing operations. Again, the same request Eisenhower had seen since Sicily, the same pattern of caution and delay. Eisenhower knew which general delivered results ahead of schedule. Every American commander knew. German generals knew. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. He chose Montgomery anyway. 5 critical battles where American aggressive tactics could have shortened the war. 5 times Eisenhower chose British caution over American speed. This wasn't incompetence. This was choice. Political pressure from Churchill mattered more than military efficiency. Alliance unity mattered more than American lives. July 1943. The Allied invasion of Sicily began with a clear hierarchy. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery commanded the British 8th Army. Lieutenant General George Patton commanded the American 7th Army. The operational plan gave Montgomery the starring role. His forces would advance up Sicily's eastern coast along the main highway to Messina. Patton's forces were assigned a supporting mission protecting Montgomery's left flank. Montgomery's timeline, 6 to 8 weeks to reach Messina. His plan emphasized careful preparation and methodical advance. No unnecessary risks. Wait for supplies. Build overwhelming force before each attack. Patton received his orders and immediately saw what they meant. He would watch Montgomery take weeks to accomplish what aggressive tactics could achieve in days. American soldiers would provide flank security while British forces claimed the glory. He decided that wasn't acceptable. Patton studied the map and saw an opportunity. General Harold Alexander's directive was vague. Protect Montgomery's flank. Patton interpreted reconnaissance in force as license to take the entire western half of Sicily. If his 7th Army advanced up Sicily's western coast, they could race Montgomery to Messina. Alexander eventually gave him clearance to take Palermo and advance to Messina. It was aggressive exploitation of vague orders. His staff warned him this would create friction with Montgomery. Patton didn't care. August 17, 1943. Patton's forces entered Messina hours before Montgomery's 8th Army arrived. The race was over. The American general who was supposed to protect the flank had beaten the British general who had the main assignment. The numbers told the story. Patton had covered more ground, fought more battles, and reached the objective first. His forces had advanced faster than Montgomery's planning documents said was possible. Montgomery's response was revealing. He claimed it wasn't a race. He insisted the timeline had always been flexible. He argued that his forces had faced stronger German resistance. Montgomery's plan had predicted capturing Messina by August 15th. Patton entered on August 17th. More importantly, Patton had covered double the distance through more mountainous terrain. The operation was supposed to take 6 to 8 weeks. Patton ended it in 5. Montgomery had received priority for supplies and air support. Patton succeeded despite having the supporting role. German commanders saw the same pattern. They described Patton as dangerously aggressive and unpredictable. They characterized Montgomery as cautious and methodical to the point of being easy to defend against. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Montgomery made a specific promise to Eisenhower about what British forces would accomplish on the first day of the invasion. Montgomery promised he would capture Caen on D-Day itself. The city was 7 miles inland from Sword Beach. It was a critical road junction that would open the path for Allied breakout from the beachhead. The plan was clear. British and Canadian forces would push inland aggressively. They would take Caen within hours of landing. American forces would secure Utah and Omaha beaches, then advance west toward Cherbourg. Montgomery's written orders to his commanders specified Caen as a Day 1 objective. Take the city quickly, control the road network, enable rapid expansion of the beachhead. This wasn't Montgomery making vague predictions. This was the operational commander giving specific objectives with clear deadlines to subordinate units. July 9, 1944. British and Canadian forces finally captured the northern part of Caen, 33 days after D-Day. The complete city wouldn't be fully liberated until July 19th, over a month after Montgomery promised to take it on the first day. While Montgomery was planning his next set-piece move from a comfortable headquarters, American GIs were trapped in a green hell. In the bocage around St. Lo and the Cotentin Peninsula, every yard was paid for in blood. The swinging gate that was supposed to liberate them was stuck on its hinges at Caen. To the High Command, Caen was a pin on a map. To the American infantrymen, it was the reason his best friend wasn't coming home. Montgomery's response to missing his deadline by over a month was breathtaking in its dishonesty. He claimed it had always been the plan to draw German armor to Caen and hold them there. He argued that British forces were performing their mission perfectly by keeping German panzer divisions engaged. This might have been convincing, except historians found Montgomery's pre-D-Day orders. They said, take Caen on Day 1. Montgomery launched multiple operations to capture the city. Operation Perch, Operation Epsom, Operation Charnwood. All failed to secure Caen fully until July 19th. His post-war narrative contradicted his own written orders. Eisenhower's defenders would later argue that Montgomery's sector successfully drew 7 of the 8 German panzer divisions in Normandy, which allowed Patton's Cobra breakout to face primarily infantry. This was valuable, even if unintended. But it didn't change the fact that Montgomery had failed his stated objective for over a month. September 1st, 1944. Third Army had just completed one of history's most impressive military advances. Patton's forces had covered over 400 miles in less than a month. They had liberated huge sections of France. They had reached the Meuse River. They were running out of fuel. The logistics situation was critical. Allied forces were still supplied from Normandy beaches. Trucks were hauling fuel and ammunition hundreds of miles from the coast. The Allies desperately needed major ports closer to the front. Eisenhower faced a clear choice. Give fuel priority to Patton's Third Army, which was advancing rapidly and could reach Germany within days. Or give fuel priority to Montgomery's 21st Army Group for an operation aimed at capturing ports and crossing the Rhine. Montgomery proposed Operation Market Garden. Drop 3 airborne divisions behind German lines to capture bridges across rivers in the Netherlands. British armored forces would advance along a single highway, cross the bridges, and establish a bridgehead across the Rhine. Success would bypass German defenses and open the route into northern Germany. The operation required enormous resources. 3 airborne divisions, thousands of transport aircraft. Priority for fuel and supplies. Everything diverted from other operations to support Montgomery's plan. Patton argued for maintaining Third Army's momentum. His forces were already advancing. German defenses were collapsing. Give him the fuel, and he could be across the German border before the weather turned. Drive east, not north. Keep pushing where success was already happening. Eisenhower approved Market Garden. He diverted fuel and supplies from American armies to support Montgomery's operation. 3 American airborne divisions were placed under British operational control. The entire Allied air transport fleet was dedicated to the operation. Market Garden launched on September 17, 1944. It failed disastrously. British airborne forces were surrounded at Arnhem. Over 17,000 Allied casualties. 3 American airborne divisions that had survived D-Day were dropped into a death trap. The operation gained no strategic advantage. The bridges were captured, but British 30th Corps couldn't advance up the single highway fast enough. German resistance was stronger than intelligence predicted. The Arnhem Bridge fell back into German hands after 9 days. Montgomery's explanation followed his usual pattern. He blamed intelligence for underestimating German strength. He blamed weather for delaying airborne drops. He blamed the terrain for limiting 30th Corps' advance. What he didn't do was accept responsibility for designing an operation that required everything to go perfectly. While Market Garden was failing, Patton's Third Army sat idle. The fuel that could have supported his advance to Germany went to Montgomery's disaster instead. The opportunity to end the war in 1944 was gone. German commanders later testified they couldn't believe the Allies halted Patton's advance. They were preparing to abandon positions in September. When Third Army stopped, they used the time to regroup and prepare defenses. December 16, 1944. German forces launched their last major offensive in the west. They attacked through the Ardennes forest where American lines were thinly held. The offensive achieved complete surprise and created a massive bulge in the Allied front. The Battle of the Bulge happened because Eisenhower's September decision gave Germany 3 months to prepare. The fuel wasted on Market Garden could have put American forces across the Rhine before winter. Instead, Allied armies fought a defensive battle in freezing weather against an enemy who should have been defeated months earlier. Over 80,000 American casualties. 19,246 Americans killed in the snow. The 106th Infantry Division surrendered 7,000 men, the largest mass surrender of American forces in the European theater. These weren't acceptable losses in a calculated risk. These were preventable casualties that resulted from poor strategic decisions made 3 months earlier. The battle demonstrated the contrast between Patton and Montgomery one more time. When Eisenhower called his emergency meeting at Verdun on December 19th, most commanders said they needed days or weeks to respond to the German offensive. The weather was terrible. Moving large forces in winter would take time. Patton said he could attack within 48 hours. Everyone thought he was insane. Third Army was 100 miles south of the battle. Patton would have to disengage from current operations, turn his entire army 90 degrees north, and launch a coordinated attack through winter storms. Patton's staff had anticipated the possibility. His intelligence officer, Colonel Oscar Koch, had warned about German preparations in the Ardennes. Patton had contingency plans ready. He left the Verdun meeting and put his plan into motion immediately. On December 22nd, exactly 3 days after the meeting, Patton's forces attacked the southern flank of the German Bulge. They relieved Bastogne on December 26th. It was one of the most impressive operational movements in military history. While Patton was executing his remarkable relief operation, Montgomery was given temporary command of American forces north of the German penetration. This included the U.S. 1st and 9th Armies. The decision made operational sense. The German offensive had split the American front. Montgomery's headquarters was closer to the northern sector. He could coordinate the defense more effectively than Bradley from distant Luxembourg. Montgomery performed competently. He organized defensive positions. He positioned British reserves behind American lines. He coordinated counterattacks once the German offensive lost momentum. But Montgomery's role was coordination and defense. Patton's role was aggressive counterattack and relief. One general stabilized a chaotic situation through careful planning. One general turned the battle through rapid maneuver and aggressive assault. The contrast was stark. Montgomery received temporary command of 2 American armies and used them to hold positions. Patton received orders to attack and delivered one of the war's most impressive offensive operations. Montgomery's January 7, 1945 press conference revealed what he really thought. He described how he had found American forces in disarray and confusion. He claimed British command had organized the defense that stopped the German offensive. He made it sound like he had saved the Americans from disaster. The press conference nearly destroyed the Allied command structure. American generals were furious. They had just watched their soldiers die in the snow while Montgomery claimed credit. Eisenhower had to personally intervene to prevent senior American commanders from resigning. March 22, 1945. Patton's Third Army reached the Rhine River near Oppenheim. German forces had blown most bridges and were defending the eastern bank. Conventional military doctrine said crossing a major river against opposition required weeks of preparation. Patton didn't wait for Eisenhower's permission. He ordered an immediate assault crossing that same night. Elements of the 5th Infantry Division crossed in boats under cover of darkness. They established a bridgehead on the eastern bank. By morning, Patton's engineers had pontoon bridges operational. Armor and artillery were crossing. The bridgehead was expanding. Patton called Eisenhower to report the success. The crossing happened so quickly that German forces couldn't organize effective resistance. By the time they realized what was happening, Third Army had multiple divisions across the Rhine and was advancing into Germany. Patton later stopped by the river's edge and urinated into it, making good on a promise he had made weeks earlier. The symbolism wasn't subtle. He was expressing his contempt for German defenses and his satisfaction at crossing the Rhine before Montgomery's elaborate operation. March 23, 1945. One day after Patton's hasty crossing at Oppenheim, Montgomery launched Operation Blunder, his carefully planned assault crossing of the Rhine near Wesel. Montgomery had been preparing for months. He had stockpiled supplies. He had positioned over 1.2 million troops. He had arranged massive artillery support and air cover. He dropped 2 airborne divisions to support the operation. The operation succeeded. British and American forces under Montgomery's command crossed the Rhine and advanced into Germany. Casualties were moderate. The planning had been thorough and professional, but Patton had already proven that months of preparation weren't necessary. He had crossed with a hasty operation, minimal casualties, and immediate exploitation. While Montgomery was still preparing, Patton's forces were already advancing into Germany. The contrast couldn't be clearer. One general waited for perfect conditions and overwhelming force. One general attacked when opportunity appeared. Both succeeded, but one took months, while the other took hours. Eisenhower praised both operations publicly. Behind closed doors, he had to acknowledge that Patton had demonstrated what aggressive tactics could achieve. The careful preparation Montgomery insisted on was excessive, but by March 1945, it was too late to change the pattern. The war would be over in 6 weeks. The cost of Eisenhower's repeated preference for Montgomery's caution over Patton's aggression was already paid in full. September 4, 1944. British forces liberated the port of Antwerp intact. The docks were undamaged. The facilities were operational. It was the largest port in Europe, capable of supplying multiple Allied armies. There was one problem. The Scheldt Estuary. German forces controlled both sides of the 50-mile waterway connecting Antwerp to the sea. No ships could reach the port while Germans held the approaches. Montgomery's priority should have been clearing the Scheldt immediately. Antwerp's capture was worthless until ships could reach it. Every day the approaches remained closed meant Allied armies had to be supplied by trucks from Normandy beaches hundreds of miles away. Montgomery focused on Market Garden instead. He gave the Scheldt clearance operation low priority. British and Canadian forces didn't begin serious operations to open the estuary until October. The port of Antwerp didn't become operational until November 28, 1944, nearly 3 months after its capture, 3 months during which Allied logistics were strangled by lack of port capacity, 3 months during which Patton's advance could have been supported if Antwerp had been open. Eisenhower later called Montgomery's failure to prioritize the Scheldt one of the war's great mistakes. But at the time, Eisenhower didn't overrule Montgomery. He didn't demand the Scheldt be cleared immediately. He accepted Montgomery's judgment that Market Garden was more important. This was another example of the pattern. Montgomery pursued ambitious operations while leaving basic logistics tasks unfinished. Eisenhower deferred to Montgomery's judgment instead of imposing strategic priorities. May 7th, 1945. Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over. Eisenhower received credit as the architect of Allied victory. His diplomatic skills had kept the alliance together. His management of coalition warfare was praised by historians and politicians. But the military questions remained unanswered. Did the war have to last until May 1945? Could aggressive American tactics have ended it in late 1944? How many American casualties were the price of alliance unity? Eisenhower's defenders argue he made the right choices. Maintaining British support was essential. Montgomery's caution prevented disasters that aggressive operations might have caused. The broad front strategy prevented German forces from concentrating for counterattacks. These arguments have merit. Coalition warfare requires political compromises. Strategic decisions must balance military effectiveness against diplomatic considerations. Eisenhower kept Churchill satisfied and the alliance intact. But the critics' case is also strong. 5 battles where Eisenhower chose Montgomery over Patton. 5 times when American aggressive tactics were subordinated to British caution. Sicily showed Patton could advance faster than Montgomery's timelines predicted. Normandy showed Montgomery would miss deadlines by over a month. September 1944 showed Market Garden would fail while Patton's advance was halted. The bulge showed that giving Germany 3 months to prepare meant 80,000 American casualties. The Rhine showed Patton could cross in one day while Montgomery prepared for months. The pattern was undeniable. German commanders confirmed it in post-war interrogations. Eisenhower saw this pattern and chose to ignore it. 5 times. He chose politics over military effectiveness. He chose alliance unity over American lives. He chose the general who consistently failed to deliver over the general who consistently exceeded expectations. Post-war interrogations of German commanders revealed what Allied political leaders refused to acknowledge. The enemy understood the pattern perfectly. German commanders consistently identified Patton as one of their most dangerous adversaries. German intelligence tracked Patton's location constantly. They tried to predict where he would attack next. They reinforced positions they believed he might target. When asked about Montgomery, German assessments were revealing. They described Montgomery as cautious and methodical to the point of predictability. His operations took so long to prepare that German intelligence could detect them and reposition forces accordingly. German commanders did note that Montgomery's set-piece operations were highly effective at grinding down German resources, even if they lacked Patton's flair and unpredictability. But when facing a choice between the two, they would rather defend against Montgomery's methodical approach than Patton's aggressive tactics. Field Marshal Walter Model, who faced both commanders in the Battle of the Bulge, made the same distinction. He called Patton's relief of Bastogne remarkable because of its speed. He described Montgomery's northern sector defense as competent, but unimaginative. The enemy saw what Eisenhower's political considerations prevented him from acting on. One Allied general was dangerous. One was manageable. One shortened the war. One extended it. The 100,000 ghosts of the winter of '44 haunt Eisenhower's September decision. Every day Eisenhower played diplomat was another day a Western Union boy knocked on a door in Ohio or Pennsylvania or California. The broad front strategy looked balanced in a history book, but it looked like a gold star in a window back home. The pattern was overwhelming. The evidence was undeniable. Eisenhower saw it and chose to ignore it 5 times. He chose alliance politics over military effectiveness. He chose his post-war political career over American lives. He chose the general who consistently failed to deliver over the general who consistently exceeded expectations. The war ended in May 1945. The tragedy is that the men who died in April 1945 were killed in a war that could have been won by late 1944. Every American grave in Europe after September 1944 marks the cost of a diplomat's war. The soldiers who died didn't get to vote on whether Eisenhower's political image was worth their sacrifice. Patton had the keys to Berlin. Eisenhower gave the gas to the man who couldn't find the ignition.